Senator Alma Francis Heiliger. I would like to welcome everyone. I would like to welcome the testifiers. Good morning to all my colleagues. Good morning to the people of this territory and the staff.
Morning, sir.
I wanted to just, morning, dear. I wanted to quickly follow up on one of my colleagues had asked about a container down by a beach, because I did see it there and I saw some footage as well in St. Croix. And I think what he's asking, and I didn't get a direct answer, he wanted to know if somebody gets a permit in order to construct and build out a container as a home, is there a time limit that they have to complete it by? Because say if they got a permit to do it, does it have a deadline to be done within 6 months? Does it have a deadline to be done in 9 months? Because I think what is happening with that particular project, the person just put down the trailers and left them there. And they're not aesthetically pleasing, but there was no real type of continued work on them. And I think that's what we're trying to get at. Is there a deadline to finish these types of projects?
Senator, what the law says is that once you begin construction, you must continuously construct until completed. That if you pause after 120 days, I believe is the building permit provision, then your permit becomes null and void. And you would have to come back to the department to get that permit reissued. But so once you start building, you have to continuously construct until you complete it, unless you get an extension.
And then if the person just pauses and just doesn't do anything and is just sitting there,
So
what do you guys do in a situation like that?
I mean, in a case like that, where that person now does, if it's supposed to be a residence, then they're not going at the end of the day to get connected and get their full-time power. They're just be on a construction meter, which costs them more money to be on.
Okay, I think what we're trying to get at, I am a supporter of container homes. I want to build one, but I think when we're dealing with our beaches and you see something like that down on the beach and people are going by, it's not aesthetically pleasing that they're just sitting there and unfinished. And I think that's what we're trying to figure out, that with these types of projects, how do we get them to fruition and finalize so they could at least look a little decent when they're done? I wanted to ask a question in regards to what the positions that were cut. What do you guys do when you cut these positions that you need? Because you were saying you need at least 200 people, but when you cut people, what do you guys do to make up for that situation, the positions?
So, Senator, it's not so much cutting positions as opposed to not being able to fill vacant ones. So,
okay,
it like you still have a need, and you have a listing that shows this is still our need, but it's zero funded until we can identify where the appropriate funding source for that is.
So, with your need, when we're in the like we're about to deal with the budget cycle, so if you have a need, how do you express that you need funding for all of these positions, so we could know that, hey, we need to make sure, even if we fund half of them or whatever the case is, how do you make sure that we are aware of this? Because I was looking at and noticing, like, out of the 158 employees, I only saw like 2 positions posted online, and you said you needed 200. How do you basically let people know? Because if you need these positions and you're saying they're unfunded, or either you have to find people to fund them, how do you let people know that? And are you planning on making sure that we're aware so we could fund some of these positions?
Yes, Senator. So in what we have done, particularly for libraries, archives, and museums over the last few years, is, again, we receive what our ceiling is based on the budget. But we express that not only to the Office of Management and
1
Budget
minute.
while we're creating the budget packages. But I can say for the last 2 fiscal years in a row that I have submitted specifically to the Committee on Finance what the needs for the libraries have been. So I do know that last year our ceiling, if you will, was 6.7 million. There was a revision by the
30
Committee on
seconds.
Finance. They increased that to about 7 million. But you know, again, that is a couple of individuals, not, you know.
Okay.
So the thing for us right now is that we know not every facility is going to be open simultaneously right now because they're being worked on. But we're trying to now set
Okay.
up so that I know in FY26 one of these buildings is going to come back
Time.
online, and whether or not the budget exists for me to be able to fill that.
Okay. Mr. Chair, could I wrap up with my final question, please?
Yes, please continue.
Thank you. Mr. Oreo, what I want to ask, we are in the district of St. Thomas, St. John, we seem to be very limited with space land-wise, and your department is very critical in regards to that with build out. And we did do the land and water use plan, and because of some of the legislation I'm bringing forward, I had to do quite a bit of research on our own code with how the laws are written, how many houses could go on the size of a lot. And one of the things in my research I found, like, for example, the state of Texas, they were having a housing crisis. And what they did is they reduced the size of the lot that a house could be built on. And instantaneously, just by doing that, more houses could have been built on parcels, and their housing issue basically faded away because they could build more houses based. Do you think that is something that we really need to start looking at as a way of assisting us in trying to deal with the fact that we're limited with land at the moment here, specifically in the island of St. Thomas, St. John? And also, in some of these zones, people can only go up 2 stories. Do you think we should adjust so people can go up 3? Because if you don't have the land mass, going up 3 stories still gives you the square footage, and you could maximize what you need to maximize. Because I have to start looking at how we're preserving not only our land, but able to utilize it so we could get the housing we need. What are your thoughts?
So, simple answer to your question, Senator, is that the Senate has already been increasing density through the amnesty program that they've approved a couple of times, which is infilling underneath, and now people are getting three family versus 2 family for what the restriction is. So we've already been doing it over the last 10 years or so. I don't have a problem with increasing density vertically in residential areas to 3-story, but the caveat is you gotta be able to provide parking on your property, not on the street, to be everybody
I
else's
agree.
problem, and you have to make sure that you install a new septic system, because the existing municipal septic system right now only extends to about 33% of the territory, which means the remainder is on septics. And if you have these old septic systems that were built for 2-bedroom homes, and then now you're putting 6 bedrooms in them, you need to increase your septic capacity so that it's not running off into your neighbor's yard. So you got to address parking, and you have to address septic capacity. The majority of our lots are R2. They're 10,000 square feet. That's not a lot of room. Like, it really isn't. So I don't know about shrinking the size of an R2 zone lot, but if you can go up to 3 stories and provide all the necessary parking ancillary services, then it's something that we should look at standardizing as opposed to making an exception for later on.
Okay, thank you so much for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the additional time.
You're welcome.
Sitting here very happy listening to my colleague, and I currently am working on the legislation for ADUs, tiny homes, as well as density. So it was like, if you want to work with me, I am all open for it, because I recognize the need in our community to allow for these types of things legally to exist. And one of the things in my research I was doing when it came to density is several states allow for individuals to purchase density on their property. And when I say purchase density, for example, you have a half an acre and you have 2 houses on it, but you have correct parking, you have this, but you still have 15,000 square feet open that could be utilized. And in some states, they allow you to come in, whether some was $5,000, some charge you $10,000 that you would pay to buy density on your property to build another structure. So that's something we were also looking at, because we have to start maximizing our property here in the territory because we're running out of land. And that's just our reality. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair, for the time. Good afternoon once again to my colleagues, to the people of the territory, to the testifiers. I literally had a smile on my face earlier when Mr. Dow was sharing the simultaneous groundbreaking for both of the airports, because for me, that was one of my biggest concerns when we had that initial meeting in St. Croix. One of the questions I did ask was, I wanted some kind of guarantee that when we start the work in St. Thomas, St. John, we were going to be simultaneously working in St. Croix as well. So I'm very happy to hear that's still the same consistent message that's being put out there, because we are one Virgin Islands. I wanted to ask a question in regards to Royal Caribbean and this additional $5 that's being tacked on to assist with the development. Once the development is done, will they stop payment of that additional $5, or is this in perpetuity?
No, that $5 is for a specific project, and that's something that ourselves and the cruise line could revisit at a time. But it's for that project specific.
Okay, so once it's done, they will stop paying that additional $5 unless you guys negotiate something else. Have you looked into or working with other cruise ships for projects similar to that, where they would assist with investing back into the territory?
Just for the record, the only agreement the authority has is with that of Royal Caribbean. We have a contract, just like Waiko have contracts with Carnival and all these other lines that goes up there. Our only contract is with Royal Caribbean. So I don't know what Waiko would be doing in terms of any project with the lines that call on them.
Okay, thank you. I know we had a little bit of chat earlier about the conditions of the runway and, some concerns there. While those concerns came forward, are there any plans to potentially alleviate any concerns in the future, or do you feel like this was just an occurrence that happened? Is this long term? What's happening with the runways?
Unfortunately, that'll happen. I hate to say it, but the truth is that will continue to happen, because we're looking at asphalt pavement in excess of, and sub-base in excess of 30 years old. They have outlived their life. At that time, you had, back when some of these things were built, you had some smaller aircraft, not as heavy, not as powerful, but on the same equipment. So we believe that, but the answer to that, we're not just saying that we have a problem. The solution is the overlay that we expect to do temporarily, and then some actual reconstruction of the sub-base. So we could put on a covering, we could put a layer. It's just like the roads out there. You put a layer of asphalt on it, but you don't address where underneath the surface it's going to move, it's going to collapse, and eventually. But we are
30
working on
seconds.
it, and that's why we keep crews. We have a contract right now. As that happens, we have a response team, both port and private sector that deals with that. But it's going to happen for a minute more. I can tell you that.
Okay. Thank you so much. While you're going through the process of redevelopment in both districts, what are your plans in regards for the daily operation and the disruption
Time.
that more than likely will occur? What are your plans for that? Do you
Well-
guys have a way? How are you discussing that with the partners?
Yes. So every month, the Port Authority have an airport meeting with the users, the tenants, and our folks come together once a month, the airlines. And in that meeting, they'll discuss how we're going to phase it. For example, we're doing some work by Gate 10. Well, maybe, just as an example, Cape Air can't park there this time. They have to move up further. We made the adjustments. American Airlines, from time to time, we have to shift them around, push them further up there with Spirit lands, or bring them, but we manage it. And what we try to do is, we know the peak hours. So we try to walk within the peak hours when they're going to be landing, taking off, and then try to do as little as we can. And one of the big costs to what we do is the night work. Sometimes you're sleeping, you don't know that, but we literally have people after 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, people working there until 4 o'clock in the morning. So we do that to accommodate the flights in and out as well. Thanks.
Excellent. Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the additional time.
No problem. Director Doe.
I don't think.
Good afternoon.
I don't think so.
I don't. Here it is. It's on now. Good afternoon to my colleagues, to the people of the territory, to the testifier. I was listening to the conversation with the banking issue, and I don't think the issue really exists because all the research that I did, and I was one of those that took that trip back in 21 when we went up to Colorado to learn how they did it. And it was always a situation where banks in almost all the states don't take the money. So that's not something we need to solve. We already knew that was the problem with transferring money. We found out what a lot of the businesses do is they literally set up vaults in their own businesses. They have cameras that are set up that are tied into the police department to monitor and check those things. So I'm confused at this conversation we're having because we already know it can't be done. So this is not a problem to resolve. Whatever businesses are coming in, they are fully aware that the banks are not taking their money. So if they want to get into that business, they know what they have to do to protect their money. This is a fact in almost every state that has set up the cannabis industry. So when I'm here listening to this conversation about, this is the holdup, I don't know if to laugh or to assume I'm here just spinning my wheels like a hamster listening to the same conversation over and over. It just doesn't make any sense to me. The other thing I wanted to, one of the things I learned going on that trip is it had to do with the amount of money we potentially could make. And I think for me having this conversation, I'm just concerned about, are we ever going to see any benefit financially to this territory? Because that's what this was about outside of the municipal dealing with assisting individuals with medical marijuana, because I definitely see the health benefits. But we also went into it from a standpoint, how does it financially benefit the territory? And have you looked into any kind of analysis or projections in regards to that? Because the last time I had a conversation with another individual that was in your seat, nobody knew anything. So it's almost like you're opening a business and you have no projections no way of saying, well, hey, is this going to be a profitable business or not? And we're having conversations of, hey, government just keep giving us money so we could figure it out. I'm not co-signing on that, because we have to have something solid that we could say, well, listen, this is the kind of revenues that we will potentially be getting as a benefit to the people of this territory. When I went on that trip, the gentleman that actually shared his projections with us, he said on the low end, it would be roughly about 25 million, on the high end, about 40 million. And he also shared that you also have to look at the increase of other social issues that will come because we have now legalized marijuana. So out of that potential high end of 40 million, we got to put out money to the police department. You have to put out money to the health department for programs. So that's going to cut it down. And I remember that meeting, the administration shared what they wanted to tap into was dealing with patenting strains of marijuana, so that's where the potential revenue would come from, because that's what they saw as a way of making money. Because if we're really going to look at 25 million and 40 at the top, and you have to deduct all this monies, it's a moot business. So have you guys had conversations with the administration in regards to what they feel is the money maker here? Because if we don't have a pathway to make this money, setting up this whole thing, it's going to end up being a money
30
pit
seconds.
where we're putting the bill and I don't see any revenues coming in. That's where my concern. I'm about making money for the territory. What are your thoughts?
Well, that was a lot to chew on, Senator Frances Heiliger. Thank you. Let me go back to the first thing, just for clarification. The banking issue that we're talking about, and while 100% I agree with you, and I believe Senator Bolquist and I were talking about that a few minutes ago, is that there is it's a two-pronged issue when we're talking about banking. There is an issue for cannabis entrepreneurs who want banking services and financial services. It's just not available to them, and that's not the issue that we're talking about. What I think Senator Bolquist was asking, and what I was referring to, was the banking of the government money related to the OCR and being able to bank that money. So it's a two-pronged issue. So it's not, the obstacle is not the issue for cannabis entrepreneurs.
There was a solution for that as well. When we went to Colorado, they set up an entire section within the governor's office that dealt with how the money was funneled through the government and went into different agencies directly. So I don't know if your office could potentially whether set up and look at how they did it and see how you could get through that, because we need to stop spinning wheels here. But did I hear my time? I want to make sure.
Time. Not that I didn't enjoy the discussion, but time. So let me now piggyback on your